Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to episode number 84 of the Entree Pastors Podcast. My name is Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and this episode, we're talking about, me and my co-host Les Hughes, we are talking about 7 investments every pastor must make. And if we don't make these investments, we will suffer for it. And certainly this goes far beyond just financial. One of the things that we see many pastors fall into the trap of is putting all of their eggs in one basket, and that is ministry. So much of what we do as pastors, so much of our identity of who we are, if we're not careful, can be wrapped up in the work of the church and the ministry work that we do. And on the surface, that may sound good, it may feel good, but the reality is it will lead us to some very unhealthy places very quickly. And so in this episode, we're going to list 7 areas of our life where we need to be making investments on a regular basis in order to be healthy and whole. And it may surprise you, some of the things that are on this list. So we're excited to share this conversation with you. So here we go. Let's get to it. Well, hey, Les, this episode I want to bring to our podcast, a conversation. We're going to call this 7 investments every pastor must make. And if you saw that and thought that we're talking about financial investments and stock markets and real estate and stuff like that, not so much, not on this show. I recently finished reading a book, and I think you've read this book as well, called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. You've read that, correct, Les?
Yep.
How long has it been? A long time since you've read that book, or recently?
No, I finished it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you and I were reading it, probably didn't even know each other was reading the book, but I just finished reading it today. And it's a great book, by the way. If you are an entrepreneur, really, I don't care if you're in entrepreneurial stuff or not, but the principle is buy back your time. It's the one thing you cannot make more of or get more of. And so he gives some very practical advice about how to build a life around getting more of your time back. But at the end of the book, he ends with something he calls the 7 pillars of life. And he talks about how we need to make investments into all 7 of these things. And I'm going to share those. You and I are going to walk through these today, Les, on this episode, because I think this is great, whether you are an entrepreneur or not, even if you're just a pastor, if that's all you do. I see many pastors that have failed to make investments in these areas of their life. They go all in on ministry, all about the church life. And by the way, entrepreneurs can do the same thing, where it's like, the rest of my life is going to go on hold because I got to build this business. And what they end up with is maybe a successful business, and then they end up in the hospital, or they have a family that doesn't want to talk to them or whatever. So we're going to walk through some of these things and talk about the importance of making these investments into these 7 pillars of life. So how about we just get right down to it, Les? How about I throw them out there and you riff on them? How does that sound?
Let's do it.
All right. Number 1 is health. Without your physical health, I don't care how successful of a pastor or entrepreneur you are, you got to have a great business. And if you're laying in the hospital or, dying of some disease, like all of a sudden everything else pales in comparison. So he makes the point about the importance of investing into our physical health. What say you to that, Les? And what does that look like in your life? What advice would you give around this arena for our listening audience?
I'm glad we're starting off with this one because and I'll speak to it specifically in a second, but it's a perfect example of why the whole concept of investing and using that analogy is so appropriate in these categories. A few years ago, Michael Hyatt, he was the first, at least, that I saw sort of use this idea of investing in these different areas instead of just balance. Everybody wants to talk about a balanced life, and that's absolutely a myth. It just does not exist. There are certain rhythms to life and seasons to life. Even in Scripture, we're given plenty of examples of that, and in creation, we're given plenty of examples, but not balance. And so Hyatt kind of went down that road. And here's his main premise: nobody arrives at a good place accidentally. in each of these categories. Just as you wouldn't arrive at a good place, we'll get to finances, but if we're talking literally about a retirement account, an investment account, there are some rules of thumb and some patterns that we now have because of time, and we can pretty much tell on average what financial investments will do over a certain amount of time outside of some kind of catastrophe. And so it's math, it's not drama, it's just math. So you do the math and you can determine what it's wise for you to set aside, out of each paycheck or each month or whatever. All of these categories are like that. So I'm just using that as an umbrella a place to start from. And health is like that. If you ever tried to get ready, for a major reunion, or maybe when you were younger, somebody tried to squeeze into a tux, or in the lady's case, a dress for a wedding, then you know how hard it is to come up a week before time and try to drop that weight or get fit. You're not going to get fit, in that amount of time. But if you, like all these other categories, rather than try to do something real big, possibly even that would hurt your overall health, you do the small things, making those small investments in an intentional way over a long period of time. And that allows you to be healthy in all of these areas. And so if you start with physical health, it's way more beneficial to spend, 30 minutes doing some consistent cardiovascular activity, even if it's just walking in your down your neighborhood, or if it's more intense on a treadmill or weights or whatever. That 3 times short intervals over a consistent amount of time is more beneficial than one 90-minute session a month.
Correct.
Where you just kill yourself.
Yeah. And for me, Les, this is one of those areas, and I'm sure this resonates with many in our audience, that I know this stuff intellectually to be true, but for me, this has been an area of struggle. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, man, I do not want to be one of the patients that I go on in the first, responder world on a regular basis, someone who has not been making these investments. And they get to these later years of life and they are sick and they are severely obese and they have just no quality of life whatsoever. And so even now, like as we speak, as we're recording this, just this past week, I kicked off what they call this. A lot of people have probably heard of this. It's called the 75 Hard Challenge. It's really more of a mental discipline type of a thing, but it's the physical part of it that is most attractive to me. And the rules of that, if you mind if I share those rules real quick, Les?
Oh, that sounds good.
So the 75 Hard Challenge, it's 75 days, and there's a few simple rules or objectives to this challenge. The first one is you have to set a meal plan. They don't prescribe what that is. You set it, but then you have to stick to it. And there's no alcohol in that 75 days, if that's a thing for you. Also, I added to that no soda, because I don't drink a ton of soda, but I don't really want to drink any, just because it's really not awesome for my health. So, and by the way, I go all in when I do something. So like if I drink one, I'm probably going to drink the rest of them. So anyway, I put that on the list. And so you follow a meal plan. The second one is there's 2 45-minute workouts every day, and one of them has to be outside. The third rule is you drink a gallon of water a day. The fourth one is read 10 pages of a nonfiction book. And then the fifth one is you take a daily progress picture. And if you, at any point in those 75 days, you fall off in any one of those areas, the challenge is over. You got to go back and start at the beginning again. So I'm like just barely getting going on this, but it's for this very reason. I will not become one of those people that neglected their physical health. And already just a few days in, man, I'm feeling good. Starting to get a little my chin back. You can see my chin coming back out. Just one of them. One of these is going to go away. So anyway, man, like
that's a strong chin. But one thing though, I need those pictures.
Thank you.
I need those pictures, John.
You will get them when I have the final product, and then
they'll be safe with me.
Yeah, I bet they will. We'll see about that. So anyway, physical health. What are you doing? Like, by the way, right now I play racquetball, which kind of is going to go into our next thing that he mentions, but because it's physical, but it's also fun. But what's some things you do for your physical health right now, Les?
Well, some of the eating habits you mentioned, I follow. I really don't drink many sodas at all. And there are times we go through and I'll have sugary stuff. Like right now, my wife just got through with a birthday. And so my goodness, we've had some cake and ice cream.
Happy birthday,
But
Paige.
overall, I stay pretty careful on all that stuff. We don't eat a lot of red meat around us. So we do a lot of chicken and fish here, but that's just because we like it. We just do that.
Yeah.
But what I find, John, is mostly portions that sets us on a dangerous path. It's not the actual food, but it's more the amount of it. And
Yep.
I mean, here's the thing, man, for people that are in some kind of vocational ministry, well-meaning people are always putting stuff in front of us, and there's always there's a meeting or a meal or, hey, can we do lunch? And then there's the fellowship times and covered dishes, and people just want to be nice. And so you just have to temper that and don't go nuts. As far as the activity goes, that's another one. We have a tendency to sit around to either study or read or sermon prep, or whether we're counseling people or whatever. So I've got to intentionally make myself get up. And what I do a lot of times, John, just to break up the day, is rather than take a lunch, I might do a protein shake or a quick sandwich in the office. And after I spend an hour or so in our gym. So we have an activities building, a family life kind of building, and it's got full weights and all that. And so I do that about 3 times a week. And then, I do also Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that really helps me with my flexibility and just to move around some and burn some calories. That's really been good too.
Yeah, good. Well, we're not here to, give fitness coaching necessarily, but want to encourage our audience. Like, this is not something you ignore because you're busy building a business or building a church. Like, you've got to make this investment, and it'll be a lot of regret if you don't. So join us on that, discipline of being healthy and having a healthy lifestyle when it comes to physical health. The next thing he mentions as the second pillar is hobbies. And man, Les, I meet a lot of pastors who cannot remember the last time they had fun. And if your version of fun is, well, I had a deacons meeting last night, like, bro, we got to help you get out more, like that ain't fun. So,
Really?
I'm glad you like your deacons or elders or whatever, but if that's what you call fun, we need to get you into fun. So I think it's easy when we get into ministry and, man, then here's Jon and Les saying also, build a business while you're doing ministry. Where in the world is there room for hobbies and fun? But it's so important. He says in his book, Dan Martell says, you do your hobbies not just for you, but for others, because, when you get done doing that thing, whatever it is, you get back from that run, you get back from that fishing outing or whatever, like, you feel refreshed, you feel rejuvenated. And so it's not just something you do for you, you do it for others. But a lot of times we feel like, well, that's selfish of me to take that time and go do something that's fun. What say you to that?
Well, it adds to your overall health. And so you want to be healthy, mentally as well as physically. And so I don't think it's a selfish thing to do at all. Personal, what are you are doing personally now? You've kind of mentioned a couple of them because I think you enjoy some of the fitness things is actually ends up being sort of a hobby for you. What are some of those that you like?
Well, a little bit. Like, as of late, I've really gotten back into racquetball, and you can laugh at me if you want. I do wear a headband, and eventually I'm going to get some big tall white socks that go up to my knees, but I don't have those yet.
Andre
But,
Agassi.
yeah, I have a lot of fun with that, though. It's a fun game. It's fast paced, so there's that. But believe me, not all of my hobbies are fitness oriented. But I love the outdoors. So you take me to the beach, you put a fishing pole in my hand. I like to hunt. I like to hike. I do a lot of walking. Again, that gets back to the physical health, but I love to just get outside and walk. I can think and pray and get perspective on things. So, anything that's outside, that's active, man, I love that stuff. Those are all hobbies of mine.
Yeah, I'm with you. Man. Mine's kind of seasonal. So in the summertime, I really love to golf. We've got some friends and we don't travel too often much. It's mostly around here, but every once in a while we'll travel and we may go to a place like, Pebble Beach, or when we're trying to save up and take a trip over to the, United Kingdom and play some maybe in Scotland. But those are rare. It's mostly around here. And then in the wintertime, I'm like you. I like to get in the woods, and I like to just kind of be out there. If something comes by that's worth harvesting, that's fine. But if not, I just like being out there.
Yeah, same, man. Well, good stuff. So hobbies, that's big. I challenge you, if you're listening to this, What are your hobbies? What are some of those things you've let go a long time ago that maybe need to be resurrected, and bring them back and make those investments into that fun, into those hobbies. The third area he mentions, he calls it spirituality. He just kind of gives a generic, like, be connected to something spiritual. I'm going to insert the word faith into that. And for me, my faith is securely in the person of Jesus Christ. That's no surprise to anybody that knows me or is a listener to this show. But one thing I would say just to pastors on this note is, and this is preaching to the choir, you've heard this before, but it's easy sometimes in ministry for our devotional life to just become really incorporated with sermon prep and kind of the vocational side of things. And for me personally, especially as of late, man, I've just really been in this place where fresh and new, been asking Jesus, like, make me hungry for you again. Like, I want to know you. I want you to be at the center of all that I am and all that I do. And so to really just develop that faith part of my life, not just going to church or doing religious duties, but leaning into my relationship with Christ. That's what that means for me, when I think about making those investments into my faith, not just the vocational side of being a pastor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a given. I think people outside of, or let's just say, even people in the church that watch pastors or people in pastors' family, they just sort of assume that because we're supposed to always be in it. But man, it is not the same.
Yeah.
And God is way more than our boss. I think in ministry, I think pastors and people in leadership, they can kind of consider God their boss. And
Mm.
my goodness, he's just so much more than that. He's our savior and redeemer and friend and heavenly father and all of those things. And, there's, if you're not careful, you just I can get to a place where my Bible reading and my study is just to crank out more content
Yeah.
and not for my personal relationship with him and my spiritual growth. That's what you're saying. So
Yep.
I do think that it's a cause for attention for sure.
Yeah. And it's one of those areas that if we neglect that for too long, we start to feel that. We start to, appear as anemic in that area of life. And again, it's just not a good place to be. I've been in those dry seasons of faith, and those are not fun times. So this is something to keep investing in and not go, well, I'll get back to my faith part of my life once I get this business going. Like, don't neglect your faith while you're building this thing. Same if that thing is the church, like, because it happens. Pastors get so busy building the church and working for the Lord, they forget to enjoy the Lord and walk with him. So
That's right.
that leads well into the next one. The fourth thing he mentions, pillars of life, as he calls them, is friends. And again, if I meet pastors who don't have hobbies, I meet pastors who don't have many friends. And it's one of the things, by the way, Les, I love about Entre Pastors is not that we're providing deep friendship for all pastors out there, but we are providing some level of community and some level of relationships. But certainly I'm not saying that should be the be all end all for pastors. Pastoring can be a lonely place. Leadership can be lonely regardless of what space you're in. And so if you're in the church space, you're a pastor, man, if you are not intentional about investing into friendships in your life, you can find yourself in that place of going, I have a lot of people who show up and listen to me every week. I have no one who actually knows me outside of my family. No one who actually knows me and likes me for who I am outside of the pulpit, outside of the church. And that is not a healthy place to be. And we want to see you making investments into the friendships in your life. And I'm so grateful, Les, that I've got some deep friendships in my life, people that don't just appreciate me because I can preach from behind a pulpit, but they know me for who I am, and they like me even in spite of all of my imperfections. And I know you have that too, as I hear you talk about you and Paige in your world. You guys have friends, close friends, and that's good. And a lot of pastors don't have that. So what else would you add to that one?
Yeah, a lot of them don't. And this is really a tricky one. There's two extremes. One is to isolate, oneself so much that it does end up being lonely and very unhealthy. The other is to, to not be discerning and basically invite everybody in that inner circle, but not everybody is a trustworthy person. And so
Yeah.
there's that balance. I sure don't want to end up being, or anybody else to be cynical about that or untrusting. I mean, believe the best. If you're a person that, believe the best, but it's almost like, like Reagan used to say, well, what's a trust, but verify.
Right.
You just have to be very discerning, because not everybody is I'll just use the word deserving or worthy of the same level of trust. That's just the
Yeah.
way it is. And so the way that I'm wired, fortunately, is that I can have a few but very close friends, and then a lot of others that are friends but not like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this isn't, it's not anybody's fault necessarily. It's not meant to be, it's not malicious on anyone's part. It's just that you wait and see. You've experienced this too. You can have friends that are in your fellowship or in your church that you're leading as a shepherd, and if you step out of that role and somebody else steps in, and you don't have that role anymore, I'm telling you, man, it gets a little weird.
Yep. I've been
It
through
it,
it several
it
times.
changes. I know you have, and
Real thing.
it just changes. And again, it doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. It's just a different deal. And special is the friend that can still have that friendship, whether you're in that role or not. And I've got a few folks like that, and I know you do too.
Our friend Dan Miller, I don't know if he coined this term or if he stole it from someone else, but he talks about having your 3 a.m. list.
Yeah.
And the idea is, that list of people who you could call at 3 a.m. and ask for $10,000 and, or whatever other help you need. And they would, I might add another layer to that, like the group of friends that you could call and they'd actually help you move a body if needed to, but maybe we won't go there. But anyway, I've heard that's a statement that real friends help you move. Real friends help you move bodies. I saw that on a bumper sticker once.
Yeah, and I think
anyway.
I think Dan's rule of thumb is that you should have one for every year of your life.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. And so I did that a while back. I kind of started listing, like, seriously, who are people in my life, relationships that I could, put on that 3 a.m. list and call in the middle of the night, and they would answer their phone if they heard it ringing, and and be there for me. And I'm so grateful to say that my list was pushing 100. Like, I could probably put 100 names, like, realistically, of people that would consider. I'm not saying we're all like super deep friends in terms of like we hang out all the time, but people who know and love me and would be there for me. And by the way, that does, like you said early at the beginning of this episode, that doesn't just happen. You have to make investments. If a man wants friends, he must show himself friendly. Scripture says, like, this is another quadrant of our life we need to be making investments in, so that there's something there when we need to make a withdrawal.
Yeah, another way I've heard somebody put this, to do it as an exercise, if you're a goal-oriented person, is imagine, that you're at your memorial service, the celebration of life service, and what are people saying about you? Better, what do you want them to say about you? And then what you want them to say about you, just ask yourself, okay, what kind of daily habits would somebody be doing that people said that about? And then start doing them.
Yeah. Yep. Number 5, he talks about love, and this could go a lot of directions, but he's basically saying go all in on your relationships. He's talking about those that are closest to you, your spouse, your kids. Again, we just talked about friends, but people that are in your world, that they know that they're loved and that you have made those investments and that you feel that love, that you experience that love. And I couldn't agree more. Anything else on that one, Les?
Well, the saying is you always hurt the one you love, and that comes from just taking them for granted, And so I would say a good rule of thumb there is to just pay special attention to treat your immediate, those that very close circle. Let's start with immediate family. You may be their pastor, but you're their dad as well. And so a loving church understands that. And I think it's a little different now, John, than it was, a couple of decades ago. And I mean that in a good way, but it's still something we have to pay attention to, because I think deep down we know that even if it's not intentional, if we neglect our family a bit or make some sort of choice that puts them in the second place, deep down we know they're going to forgive us.
Yeah.
That's not a good reason to do it. That ought to be a reason to show them more,
Yeah.
a favor.
A few episodes back, you and I had a conversation with Eric Replog, and he wouldn't mind me saying this. I don't think he said it in our interview with him, but in the phone conversation I had with him before the interview, he was talking about what he did share on the podcast about his early years in a more toxic church environment, working on staff under a very unhealthy leader. And he said there was a time where he said he knew it was time for him to leave when he made a comment after just extremely busy season in the church where they had just been running and gunning, and he needed a break. And he said to his senior pastor, he said, man, somewhat jokingly, like, I don't know if my kids remember my name or if I remember their name or something to that effect. And the pastor was not joking when he said, well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do for the kingdom of God, and implying that, hey, build this church. And if your family is left in the wake and caught in the crossfire of that, so be it. And it's like, man, that not only is that toxic, that's a great example. You can do that for a very brief season, but if you live like that on a ongoing basis, you are not making those investments, and the love's not going to be there, man. Like the love will not be there when you've built that business or that church to be what you always wanted it to be, and then your family wants nothing to do with you because they kind of got used to life without you, and now you seem like an intruder when you're around. So anyway, yeah, we want to make those investments into those most important relationships in our life. Number 6, this is a fun one, finances. I mean, that's certainly not the only reason we launched Entre Pastors, but it's a big thing that we want to help pastors in this arena. And yet this is one of those things that, man, it's easy just to ignore this, Les, and hope it gets better. Like, what a terrible investment strategy. What if your financial advisor said, hey, let's just hope your investments do good. Let's don't pay much attention to them. Let's don't be intentional. Just hope for the best. And a lot of times that's kind of our strategy when it comes to our money. I think one of the reasons for that, Les, too, is because things aren't very good in our financial situation, so it's painful to look at. It's just easier to ignore it than to really roll up our sleeves and go, okay, so do I need to get more income coming in? Do I need to cut the spending going out? How do I get my financial house in order? But this is a huge area. We make the investments along the way, it will pay back in dividends versus if we just ignore it.
Yeah. And, nobody looks up when they're whatever, 65 and says, look at this. Unbelievable. There's $1 million in my retirement account. How in the world did that happen? Yeah. I mean, they just, unless they just kind of set something on, they automated something when they were 20, and that's where it ended up. But even that was intentional, right?
Right.
So again, you've got one of two things wherever you are on the spectrum. You've either got time or you have wealth, a lot of wealth. And what happens in ministry is when you're very, very young, you have a lot of time. There's not enough margin to put some aside for a long period of time. And then later on, when you've got the margin, you don't have the time and you really got to get after it. And sometimes you just can't catch up. But that is where I think, to toot our own horn some, I do think that we can add value there and help people make up that sum in the same way I think that you and I have. And yeah.
That's one of the things I love about business and being an entrepreneur. We talk about this a lot, that earning potential that is there, that ceiling for a pastor's earning potential, which is relatively low on the grand scheme of things, is completely removed once we get you out into the marketplace. Like, there's not a board over you going, ooh, I don't know if we're okay paying our pastor that much. And you're not just trading your time for, your hours for dollars. Like, you are exponentially increasing the value that you are putting out into the world. You're seeing a return on that. It's what I love about business, and it is a way to get ahead financially and serve others while you do it. So I agree, Les, like, that's what we want to do. We want to come alongside of pastors and say, we know you haven't been doing very well financially. Let's fix that. Let's get you out into the marketplace and do something to get caught up and then thrive beyond just catching up and getting back in the black. Let's thrive.
Yeah. And of those two resources, if we just got time and wealth, you can't create any more time. The only one that you have any real control over is creating more wealth, and that we can do.
Yep.
There's no ceiling out there for that.
and you can buy back your time, which is kind of what we're talking about.
That's right.
In this book. So I want to give another shout out to Dan Martell's book. Go buy it. It's a great book. So finances, that's number 6. And then finally, number 7, he talks about the 7th pillar of life is mission. We might use the word purpose, but it's remembering your why. It's staying in connection with why are we doing all of this in the first place anyway? And what's one of the things we encourage in our pastor's roadmap to financial freedom that we offer in our membership community. We have a whole course, and part of that we help a pastor really dig into their why, not just in terms of ministry, but like life. Why are you here? What is it that you're on this planet to do? I know we could all give the textbook answer, well, I'm here to give glory to God, and yes, amen. But specifically, why did God put you here? Because I believe he created you on purpose for a purpose. And the more we can really come alive to what that mission is and stay in tune with that, it helps us remember what we're doing all this for in the first place and keeps us on track. So I love that he included mission as a part of these pillars of investment.
Yeah. And once you answer that question for yourself, write that down. Like, why am I here? And you could break it down into these different categories. Like, why do I want to start a business? Why do I believe God called me to this ministry? Why? So you can ask that question, but here's another level, John. Ask it again.
Yeah, that's good.
So once you answer that question, ask it again. And then once you answer it, ask it again. And if you go down about 4 or 5 layers, normally that's when you'll really reach the why.
I love that. Yeah, because if I would say in general, most people who come to us, why do you want to start a business? Well, I need more money. I want more money. Great. Why? Why do you want more money? Well, and then you start getting into the real reasons of what's behind this. So it's fine that you want more money. We want to help you do that, but it's not just about getting more money. There's a deeper why behind it. And so all of this is good, man. This is such good reminder for us as we are building our ministries, our businesses, to remember that while we're investing into those things, we also need to keep making investments into these other most important arenas of our life. I think he nailed it, man. I don't know that there's anything else I would add to this list. Maybe if I really pondered it, I'd say, oh, he forgot one. But I think this is a pretty good list of things to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and we recommend the book. Here's the main message of the book, and this is, you could put it a different way, I'm sure, John, but for me, the value of it was he's talking about using the resources that you have to invest so that you free up the time that there's no more of. Yep. And you can call, there's different levels of that. There's delegation, there's hiring people there. We also recommend that book, Who Not How, that talks about the value of relationships to help you reach those goals and create the life that you want. But that whole idea of buy back your time is and he lives it too, going from what the examples that he was given. I think that he really does mean it. And whether that be, I won't give it all away, but he's talking about even what you and I would think as mundane things. They take up time and take you away from your zone of genius, what you really need to be doing. And to invest in that area or pay somebody else to do those things that are mundane, they might love it. And it also would free you up to do something that you really need to be doing. And there's a whole lot more to it than that, but that's what I took away from it.
Yeah, one of the things I loved in his book is he made the point that there's people who are very wealthy who are completely stressed out because they have no margin in their life whatsoever. They're a slave to the systems that they've built, the business they've built. Pastors could fall into that. They're a slave to the ministry they've built. And so I love this idea of buying back your time, and yeah, certainly be wealthy, have margin financially and have resources, but also have the most precious commodity, which is your time and the ability to do the thing that you are here to do. So I was very inspired by it. And as he finished off the book with these 7 pillars of life, I thought, man, this is great content. I just wanted to wrap it up and share it with our audience. So, well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.